Good morning. We're at First United Methodist Church in Terrell, Texas, and we're preparing for the memorial service for Mary Beth Dudley. Thank you for joining us virtually. We're glad that you could be here. The family greatly appreciates your presence here. We'll be starting shortly. Thank you.
Really?
It's kind of like rotate slowly.
Good morning. If you all would start to take some seats here, we'd appreciate it. Good to have you come out. Many have come from far away, and thank you for being part of this today. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that we have brochures here that everybody has one of those brochures, and also order of worship. And also, we have a registry book up here, the red book up here, to sign in after the service. And if you could bring your own pen for that, that would be appropriate. So thank you. Well, welcome again, and thank you for being here. Your presence here shows more than just familiarity or neighborliness. It shows that God has called you at the heart of what it means to be a follower and a neighbor and a believer. So on behalf of the family, I'd say thank you very much for being here. Mary Beth Richardson Dudley was a longtime and faithful member of First United Methodist Church of Terrell, Texas. She taught Sunday school here, and I'm so glad to see some of the first Sunday school students who learned from her and learned with her are here today. So we're glad to see you all here as well. There'll be an opportunity later in the service for you to share really from right where you are, if you like. We can bring the microphone to you. You don't even need it if you don't just to talk, but if you have a word to share, a word of grace, a word to just share with what's your experience or your remembrance, something funny or something that you would just like to share. Anyway, be thinking about that. So what are we doing today? Today, I think the first thing we're doing is worshiping God. And what's beautiful is that we have not had in-person worship at this church since March the 8th. We've had online worship inside in the sanctuary. You're welcome to take a look at that afterward. But that's only been online with just a few people doing the production. And so this is our first worship service since March the 8th. Here's July 25th. A little warm, but a little breeze coming too. So thank you for worshiping God with us today. The second thing we're doing is having a time to remember a life well lived. To remember one who walked with us, taught us, laughed with us, broke bread with us. And we're here together to remember her. Many of you are related to her. Others are spiritual brothers and sisters. And the final thing we're here to do is to provide comfort for this family going through this time of loss. And so that's an ongoing project for us to continue. So thank you for being here, being part of this. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and I am life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, yet shall they live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. I died. And behold, I am alive forevermore, and I hold the keys of hell and death. Because I live, you shall live also. Friends, we've gathered here to praise God, to witness to our faith as we celebrate the life of Mary Beth. We come together in grief, acknowledging our human loss. May God grant us grace that in pain we may find comfort, in hope, in sorrow, hope, and in death, resurrection. Hear the words of the 23rd Psalm, and if you know a phrase or a word or the whole thing, help me out and join in. We'd love to have you as part of that, but let's do the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I want to share with you the obituary story that's being shared, and I know many of you have your own stories. And so if you have your own story, be thinking about what you'd like to say, and we'll have a solo after this obituary, and then after the solo, if there's opportunity that you'd like to share something, we'd love to hear from you. Mary Beth Dudley was born in Cleburne, Texas on December the 10th, 1928. And she passed away on May the 23rd, 2020 in Dallas, Texas. She was preceded in death by her loving parents, Lizzie Boone and Ralph Casey Richardson, and her beloved husband of 32 years, Travis Eugene Dudley, who many of you knew quite well, of course, family too. Mary Beth was a registered nurse working for many years as an office RN, director of nursing at Medical Arts Hospital, surgery supervisor at the VA hospital, and post-anesthesia unit supervisor. After retirement, she worked with the Kaufman County Visiting Nurses Association as a hospice volunteer. Mary Beth had a zest for life, was fond of butterflies and the color blue. She was lovingly called feisty by many. One nurse close to her stated, "I will always remember her beautiful smile and the nurse in her." When using her walker, it was hard keeping up with her, in spite of many attempts to slow her down. Mary Beth was an active and faithful member of First United Methodist Church of Terrell, enjoying teaching Sunday school, the Pairs and Spares class, and singing in church hymns. She is survived by her children, grandchildren, and many great-grandchildren. And our service is right here today at 9:30 on the porch and at First United Methodist Church of Terrell, Texas. The graveside will follow at Campground Cemetery, north of Poetry. And just so you know, I'll be leaving in that little white Kia Soul down the way, and I'll be able to, you can follow me if you like, but it's once we get out of town, it's not too hard. We have to go up Rockwall Street, which is right this street here. You go take a left on State, you go up, you go by the high school, and just keep on going several miles into past a town called Poetry, and after Poetry, it'll be on your right. It's called Campground Cemetery. So, in lieu of flowers, donations can be made to First United Methodist Church of Terrell. Thank you.
In the bowl there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree. In cocoons a hidden promise, butterflies will soon be free. In the cold and snow of winter, there's a spring that waits to be unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. There's a song in every silence, seeking word and melody. There's a dawn in every darkness, bringing hope to you and me. From the past will come the future, what it holds a mystery, unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see. In our end is our beginning, in our time infinity. In our doubt there is believing, in our life eternity. In our death a resurrection, at the last a victory. Unrevealed until its season, something God alone can see.
So, are there those who would like to share now? Becky? Okay.
Thank y'all for coming. Mary Beth Dudley was mom to my brother Gary and to me. She was Grandma Beth to her grandchildren and her grandchildren. I will remember her zest for life, her walk of faith, and her incredible will to live. To say she was a big part of my life and her family and friends would be an understatement. I remember that a relative telling me that it was 3.5 when she first started memorizing the Bible, and they would shoot different verses to her and she would have to memorize them, so she knew them by wherever they were in the Bible. It was pretty amazing. At 19, she gave a speech at her childhood church, the Presbyterian church there. The title of the speech was "Accept Christ as a Youth, Walk with Christ Throughout Your Life." She was 19. This was 1947. She graduated from a special nursing program during the war. She was a nurse for many, many years, and when she could no longer be a nurse, she was a volunteer nurse. She was a hard worker. She often worked several jobs for her family. She was a single divorcee in the 60s, and sacrifices were made, and we learned early on that money was a little bit tight. Just an example, one Christmas, I was asked to be a young life counselor, and my brother will remember this too. I didn't have ski clothes and I didn't have suitcases. The family didn't have any suitcases, so I told them that I couldn't come. And I mentioned that to Mom, but I let it go. The next day, Mom, there was a suitcase there. She had brought Scotchgard, and she Scotchguarded my jeans, and I had to carry the suitcase. The suitcase, I'm telling you, was probably 3 or 4 times the size of a normal suitcase. Now, imagine a young person coming up with this suitcase. So at first I was embarrassed, and they had to pull everything off the bus in order to rearrange the furniture for this bright yellow suitcase. But then I couldn't get rid of it, and I'll tell you, it was in our attic forever, because it was such a huge sacrifice. She probably had to work an extra shift to do a whole set of suitcases for me. And I, even as a young age, realized what a sacrifice that was. My brother and I were taught to be responsible and independent. Mom was the first person I called when Bob asked me to marry him. We had had a discussion when he proposed. We're not going to tell anybody. We're going to work out all the details. And I remember then, I made it about 4 hours. I don't know if I woke her up or what, but I called her because I was so excited. And he saw me about 3 days later and said, "It's time to tell the family." And I said, "Well, I've already told Mom, and by the way, here's the date, here's the colors we're going to use, and we've even got a florist all picked out." So Mom was really a big part of that. Also, she was the first one that I called when I was expecting with both of our children. And to say she was excited about that, that's also an understatement. We wrote lots of letters because I lived out of town and when I was off at school, and Bob early got used to the long phone conversations that were a part of my life as long as she could actually have them. In 1983, Mom married Travis Dudley. And she was very happy with moving to Terrell and this church. She also welcomed everybody that Travis had in his life into her life as family also, and into our lives. She was very involved with my brother's family too, and she juggled many, many times at work when she had to trade off with different people to attend birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and other family gatherings. She loved all of her grandchildren and all of her great-grandchildren. Once we had kids, we would walk in the door, and same thing for my brother. We were no longer there. The kids were the whole thing to her. And we would try to get a conversation with her started. She was totally focused on the kids. So that happened even with grandchildren and great-grandchildren. A lot of people never knew that my mom had a very keen sense of humor. She tended to be a jokester. She would say off-color things sometimes. And the people she worked with at the hospital actually loved to play pranks on her. So I don't know if anybody remembers or knows that Mom was working for a scrub nurse in the VA, which was a tough place to be because you were in charge of a little bit of the ego with some of the OR surgeons. And she had a knee surgery scheduled, and she woke up and she had both legs casted. Well, she only had surgery on one knee, and they pulled a prank on her. So, she was happy that they did something to let her know that they were with her, but she wasn't too happy having the second cast removed. A couple of belly laughs that I remember that I wanted to share with you. A few years ago, I took her to an elder doctor who she really had a great rapport with, and he reviewed her medical history after one more fall and about 6 weeks in rehab. And he looked at her and he said, "You know, you should have died about 5 years ago." I held my breath, because who says that to somebody? But I waited to see her reaction. She grabbed his hand and she threw her head back, and she had the loudest, longest belly laugh I've heard in years. And she said, "You know, you might be right." Several times they told us she won't get out of this hospitalization. Several times they were wrong. And she, to the very end, had a zest for life and not wanting to let go. Another time, Bob and I took her to the grocery store. Bob thought, well, she's getting really tired with her walker, and I'm really not sure why we went to the grocery store, because she lived in assisted living. Everything was provided for. We brought her things if she needed it, but she had to have her weekly trip to the grocery store. I think we all remember that. So Bob said, well, maybe we should get her one of those electric carts, because she gets so tired with her walker. So I said yes. So we got her an electric cart, and we're over there teaching her how to use it. She took off. She took off, and we couldn't keep up with her. She did almost like wheelies around the store, and that became a new sense of freedom for her. Are we going to the store? And she wanted to go to the store even more often so she could ride the electric cart. Something so simple that brought such great joy to her. Mom taught us many life lessons, not just eat your broccoli or that skirt's too short. Those we did learn, but some that actually stuck through the years. One last lesson I remember happened when I was 12 or 13, and I was trying to decide what to do with my life. And she said, and I'll never forget this, find something you love to do with your life and do it to help other people. I think that's what she did. I think that's what she instilled in us to do also. Another life lesson happened when our family lived in Houston. I remember calling Mom complaining, not that I ever did that, but I complained. And I said, Mom, I don't think I'm getting anything out of our church in Houston. And she responded with, it's not what you get out of church, it's but what you give to your church that's important in life. It's not what you get out of church, but what you give that is important in life. I've since over the years loved that and thought it's not just church, it's relationships, it's your job, it's your friendships. It's not what you get out of them, but what you give to them that actually is important in life. With grateful hearts, in love, we celebrate the life of Mary Beth Dudley. Thank you. That's scripture where Jesus comforted his disciples.
These are words of Christ as recorded by the Apostle John in Gospel, chapter 14, verses 1 through 3. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, you may also be.
Thank you so much. Are there others who would like to just share a word? You can stay right where you are in your seat if you'd like to say a word of remembrance about Mary Beth or something that you'd like to share. Scratch, I might say that's that person does. So, like an auction. Oh, I think we've got it. Thank you. Any thoughts? I'm sure you have stories, but you may share those on your own, maybe after the service or at the campground. I'd like to invite Blair Thompson Blair Thompson White, pastor, for many years with at Arapahoe.
Before I share the poem that I wrote about Mary Beth, I want to say that I witnessed Bob and Becky's care for her as she declined over the past several years. I had only a small glimpse of what this journey was like, but I can imagine it was difficult. And yet Becky and Bob did so much care with such grace and compassion and love every step of the way. And one of my favorite theologians says that the greatest gift we can give one another is the gift of dying well. And Becky and Bob, you gave Mary Beth this gift of dying well. And as someone who witnessed your presence with her and your patience and kindness, I can say that without a doubt, you reflected God's love for her in your care. That's what I saw in you, and for that I'm so grateful, and I suspect Mary Beth is too. So here's my poem in memory of Mary Beth Dudley. By the time we met, you were here and also not here. By your eyes, you can know a lot about a person when you look in their eyes. They say your eyes conveyed such tenderness and care. I knew the goodness and strength at the depth of your being, even though you didn't say a word. The word was clearly with you. The years of faithfulness and following Christ, so much a part of you. There is comfort in knowing the mind may lose ability, but the soul's connection with the Creator is always a present reality. Now you are not here, but what remains and will stay forever, I suspect, is the essence of your true self in your daughter and your son and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, your zest for life and feisty spirit, your beautiful smile and helping heart, your voice singing loud. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee, how great thou art. For the love we saw in you, for the love we received through you, Mary Beth, we can't help but say, how great thou art indeed.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. I want to share with you a Terrell Tribune newspaper article from December 1998 by Allison Walker. Mary Beth Dudley. Excuse me. Mary Beth Dudley was both surprised and honored to learn she had been selected as this year's best Sunday school teacher, according to the Reader's Choice poll of the Terrell Tribune. Mary Beth, who teaches the Pairs and Spares class at First United Methodist Church, said she has been teaching the class for 5 or 6 years. She said the class is made up of busy people, but they all come together and slow down for a lesson on Sunday mornings. Mary Beth has been attending the church since about 1983, shortly after moving to Terrell with her husband, Travis. Now that she's retired, Mary Beth is thoroughly enjoying small town life. As to teaching, she said, I just enjoy learning along with the class. You know, Mary Beth journeyed with us, the people. She walked alongside of us. And on the walk to Emmaus, some of you may have been on a walk to Emmaus. I'm not sure. Some of you have been part of that. You know what it is, or you've heard of people that went to. But on the walk to Emmaus, Jesus walked along beside us. He walked along beside some of the followers who were just confused and bewildered and stumbling along after the death and resurrection of Jesus. And they walked 60 furlongs, it says in the Bible, which I understand is about 10 kilometers. And I've run 5Ks before. I never have been bold enough to run a 10K, but I think that's about 6 miles. And that's a long walk. And when you walk with someone for 6 miles, you get to know them and you get to hear from them. And along the way, Jesus was walking with these followers. They didn't know who he was, but they had conversation. And at the place that they were going to say goodbye, they persuaded him to stay with them. They stayed with them and they broke the bread. And as they broke the bread and shared in the breaking of the bread, it says, they recognized him. They said, we were with Jesus the whole time. And our hearts were burning inside of us to experience Jesus the whole time. Well, I imagine you who've walked with Mary Beth these many years as her family, as her friends, as her classmates, you realize that in those presents, in those moments, in the breaking of the bread, and the teaching of the Sunday school classes, and the bringing together food for a cover dish supper, in these things we are recognized. The burning of our hearts, that the presence of Jesus Christ was in that. And you experienced that. To God be the glory. There's a hymn called When We All Get to Heaven. The refrain says it all. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, we'll sing and shout the victory. I believe at this very moment, Mary Beth is singing, and she is seeing Jesus face to face. And I think this is a day of victory. Though it hurts here, there will be a reunion in heaven, and we will see Mary Beth again. When we prepare to leave this place, like I said, we'll have a booklet here, the red booklet up here, if you could sign. If you have your own pen, that would probably be preferred to use that. Then we'll be lining up here to go, and we're not doing an official caravan, but I can give you some basic directions. So, no police escort or anything, but just try to stay together as best as we can. But realize it's not that hard once you get out of town to find it. But hear these words of the Gospel of John. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled. And do not be afraid. Thank you for being here. God bless you.